Strange Ride is brought to you commercial-free through the generous support of our patrons. Visit strangerideshow.com and click on donate to help keep the history of the weird on the digital airwaves.
For as long as I can remember, there have always been 3 mountains in Disney World. They were one of the main reasons to even go to the Magic Kingdom at all. Space Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain, and possibly the most loved flume ride of all time, Splash Mountain. No trip to Disney World would be complete without riding all 3 mountains, but there was something incredibly special about Splash Mountain in particular. It was a flume ride, a roller coaster, a dark ride, and a way to cool off all in one, as well as having one of the longest run times of any ride in the park. The ride became one of the most popular in the park and could even be seen as one of the most popular Disney rides ever created. That's why in June of 2020, it seemed most of the world was completely shocked when Disney announced that Splash Mountain would be no more. The mountain was staying, but all the critters inside that fans have come to know and love were being removed, and Princess Tiana from Princess and the Frog was being moved in. Some people were excited. It was time to let go of those characters who most people didn't even know what property they were from anyway, and to put in a more modern character. However, these some people were not nearly as loud as the opposition. Online petitions, Facebook groups, arguments, harassment, mass merch buying were seen all over the internet and even in the theme parks themselves. Disney has replaced beloved attractions before, but there has never been a reaction like this. However, Disney did not reverse their decision, and Disney World Splash Mountain had its final operating day, January 22nd, 2023. And what a day that was, Strange Riders! It included the longest recorded wait time in Disney Parks history, singing, tears, fighting to be the last person to ride the ride, and so much more. And today I will be going through the reaction to the ride's closure as well as Splash Mountain's final operating day in Walt Disney World. Welcome to Strange Ride, where I tell the smartest man I know the weirdest things I know. My name is Savannah Verrett, and I will be your guide today. But you're not the only ones going on this ride. I have Andrew Mims with me, a voice actor extraordinaire.
Hi.
And then, of course,
I say things.
Yeah, he does. And then, of course, we have the smartest man I know, Rob C. Thompson of Occult Confessions fame.
Oh no, the mass merch buying has begun.
Okay, I will explain what that means. As not a Disney Parks fan, now I'm seeing that must not make a lot of sense, but trust me, it was really weird and bad. Like, maybe not bad, but it pissed me off, so it's bad.
They've purchased all the merch.
No!
Like a Mims in his band days, that would have been like his best night if all the merch had gone.
That's the only way we ever got paid.
It was more so that like people were literally just to give you a little bit of a spoiler, people were literally going in there to buy it was literal trash bags full of merchandise as big as themselves. Like they bought all of that so that they could take it home and sell it.
Scalpers.
Maybe that would be a better way to frame it, but
no, I liked mass merch purchasers.
Because it was crazy. Okay, we'll get into it. It was crazy. And before we get started officially in this episode, I did want to say that this is officially Strange Ride's 1-year anniversary.
Oh, damn.
So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'm so glad that I get to talk about Disney again for the 1-year anniversary. This will technically be like season 2, year 2. We have to change the number convention.
Yeah, we do have to change that. So, and this is as good a time as any to share with your friends that we're still here.
And riding around. Oh my god. I'm probably going to cut that from the episode.
Don't.
I think it's charming.
I'm tired. I took a nap right before recording this.
Oh, that's good. That'll help.
Hopefully. All right, well, let's fledge it out and get started. So I stop talking off script.
Let's do it.
I solemnly commit myself to keep my hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the vehicle at all times while on the
strange ride.
I fucked that up.
It's okay.
You're relatively new to this ride.
I guess it's just for Rob and I. We're like the over voice announcers in the theme park. Just saying this.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to dedicate too much of this episode to the history of Splash Mountain because honestly, that's like Defunct Land's thing, and I already know that his episode on it is going to be amazing. But there is important context that we need in order to talk about the different things that need discussing in this episode. So, without further ado, the history of Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain was first dreamed up by Tony Baxter, a legendary Imagineer who is behind other classic Disney attractions such as Big Thunder Mountain, Star Tours, the Indiana Jones ride, and Journey into Imagination, which is where Figment made his first appearance. Call back to Epcot, our first episode.
Good old Figment.
So the year was 1983, and Baxter wanted a way to attract guests back to the much forgotten part of Disneyland, Bear Country. The only attraction in Bear Country at that point in time was the Country Bear Jamboree, and it was not attracting guests the way it used to when the land first opened in 1972. And in case you don't know what the Country Bear Jamboree is, it was literally just like a show where you saw animatronic bears sing country songs to you. Yep, so
that
it
was
wasn't
it.
exactly a thrill ride, that's for sure.
Yeah, but it was entertaining. I like those
I
country
bet you
bears.
would. I never.
I remember the movie.
They
Yeah, they did come out
did.
with
They
a
made a
movie.
live action movie, and I remember it scaring me because the bears looked really creepy in that movie. So I don't think I've ever sat through it, or if I did, I was a little baby and I haven't sat through it since. So that's probably Disney sacrilegious. So I'm sorry, Disney fans who are listening to this. But
The diehard
It's like
country
Chuck
bear
E. Cheese on
fans.
steroids. Yeah, yeah. But the bears, I mean, they were very charming. They were like all these different characters, like a dozen or so different bears, and they would come out of different parts of the you weren't just looking at the Chuck E. Cheese stage, like they were behind you and they were above you, and
I
I
didn't
thought it
know
was
you
fun.
were a super fan of the Country Bear Jamboree.
Well, I mean, I got to be honest with you. Like the mountains, you said at the beginning, I didn't really do the mountains. I'm not a roller coaster guy. Like as a kid, especially, they made me sick, so I never bothered with the mountains. I liked the shows,
Interesting. Okay.
and I liked the dark rides that really told the story. I get that the mountains like combined all the elements, but I wasn't into the
Well, it was
roller
really
coaster
only
part.
Splash Mountain that combined all the elements. Like Space Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain do have like stories to tell, but they're very loose stories that you can really only pick up from the queue like line. But
Yeah,
Splash
yeah.
Mountain did have a story to tell, and we will be getting into that. Like Splash Mountain, on top of being a thrill ride, was also a dark ride, which I think was part of the reason why it was so popular. They really Disneyfied log flume rides, and which is interesting too because I don't know if I mentioned this, but they did not, the Imagineers did not want to make a flume ride, but as executives were like, no, Disneyland needs a flume ride, so they really were like, you know what, if we have to make one, we're gonna make it Disneyfied. But yeah, so nobody was visiting Bear Country or the Country Bear Jamboree very much. Yeah, guests were much more interested in thrill rides such as Space Mountain and the one that Baxter even created on Big Thunder Mountain. So it seemed like a way to revive Bear Country was to put a thrill ride there. Baxter was told that it has to be a flume ride, and that he had to use animatronics from the now closed America Sings attraction, and that attraction was apparently just a bunch of different critters singing about America. I
That's all I'm looking for. If it's the Hall of Presidents is not enough,
Well,
give me
this
some
wasn't
critters.
Disneyland, so I don't think they don't have the Hall of Presidents in Disneyland, I'm pretty sure.
No, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, the presidents don't sing in the Hall of Presidents, so, like, it's ultimately more
Yeah, that is
boring.
missing.
Could you imagine
I would like to
how
know.
Oh,
interest
like
It's like 1776 if they
That's
broke out
true,
into
or, like,
song.
Hamilton.
where is Lincoln's musical number?
Yes, seriously.
Right.
Baxter had to find a way to combine all of these different ideas as well as keeping it relatively in the theme of Bear Country as well. Disney wasn't opposed to changing the theme of Bear Country, but it wasn't like a full retheme. It would basically have to be the same thing. It just wouldn't be called Bear Country anymore. And so he ended up landing on Song of the South, a Disney movie that came out in 1946 and has been the source of a lot of controversies, to say the least. And now, why he decided to build an entire ride based off of such a controversial movie is beyond me, but it fit all the criteria that he needed to fill. The America Sings critters would fit right in, it can work in Bear Country, and he saw a way to turn the plot of that movie, into a log flume ride. And so, before we continue, I'd like to give you a very brief idea of what the movie was like. And full disclosure, I have not seen the movie itself. Have you seen it, Rob?
No.
I feel like most people have not. And honestly, I actually didn't know that Splash Mountain was based off of a movie most of my life. I thought it was original to the parks, which is not uncommon.
When I,
So,
I will say for my millennial children out there, well, older millennial, we're all millennials here, but if you're of my older millennial generation, you probably saw segments of it, but never saw the whole thing. Because Disney and Disney Channel, yeah, would play pieces of
the
it, you
animated
know?
bits, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah, yeah.
like one of the songs from it is still fairly popular,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Zippity doo
Zippity doo
Yeah.
dah.
dah. Everybody knows that song.
You would see that on the Disney Channel. I mean, don't quote me on this, but I remember seeing it as a child, so I must have seen it somewhere. And we certainly didn't have this Song of the South VHS sitting on our
No.
shelf. You
No,
know what
well,
I
and
mean?
it was like Disney wasn't opposed to, obviously they weren't opposed to using it, but the more controversial parts of the movie were not the animated segments, which honestly was not a lot of the movie. Most of the movie was live action. Yeah, but it was the live action bits that were supposedly like the super controversial bits, and I'll tell you in a second after I get through like the synopsis of the movie. But so Disney didn't necessarily have a problem showing off the animated bits, and I was reading like the reviews, and apparently every review was like, the only good parts of this movie are the animated bits. So I think Disney was like, yeah, okay, let's just show those parts off.
Fair enough.
Stick to what we're good with.
Right. That was basically what the reviews were saying. The reviews were like, Disney, stop making live action bullshit, which is something I feel like I can relate to.
And yet, Mary Poppins, but I guess that was a blend.
Yeah. You also also love Mary Poppins.
It's a brilliant movie.
So, Song of the South, which is not a brilliant movie, was mainly live action with some animated sequences. It was about a little white boy named Johnny who was staying at his grandmother's plantation for the summer. He was upset about staying all summer because his father wasn't going to stay for some reason, and so he tries to run away when he runs into Uncle Remus, a black man and a sharecropper who worked on Johnny's grandmother's plantation. Remus tells him a story about Brer Rabbit running away and regretting it, so the boy decides against running away. The rest of the film is relatively similar in the sense that Johnny has two more problems, runs to Uncle Remus, who tells him a Brer Rabbit story, and after listening to the story, Johnny now knows how to solve his problem. From what I've read, like I said earlier, the more controversial parts of the movie are the live action bits because of how they depict their black characters. The film uses a ton of stereotypes and then also seems to imply that once slavery was abolished, because this movie does take place during the Reconstruction era, so like none of the black characters are slaves, but they are sharecroppers, which was not a great thing either, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
I mean, we don't need to get into the details of it, but no, it was not it was not the same as being an independent farmer.
Yeah. And it seems to imply that once slavery was abolished, that black people were treated great and equally, and nobody hated them anymore or was really mean to
Oof.
them. Yeah. And then also seeming to mock black people because of the stereotypes that they used in the movie. Even back when it released, there were people protesting this movie. And then this was, what, 40 years later, and Baxter was like, let's make a ride based off of this. But they'll avoid the controversial parts of it and use only the animated sequences, which are like Brer Rabbit's three different stories. So there is no mention of Uncle Remus, Johnny, the plantation slavery, or sharecropping in the ride.
Can we just take a second to just recognize that something was too racist for the 40s?
Right.
Like, that's, I don't want to say impressive, but that's the only word coming to mind.
Yeah. And then in the 80s, they were like, let's build a ride based off of it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all. I mean, I guess it made slightly more sense with the fact that like it did fit all of the criteria that Baxter was looking for, but even then it's still like it's kind of icky. So let me go into the story now of Splash Mountain. Here is my moment where I can go through the ride and its story beat by beat because I have ridden it so many times. So you hop into your log with a little Brer Rabbit carved in the front and float by the briar patch. You go up where you can see some critters' homes, including Brer Bears, before going down the first hill, Slip and Falls, which is not a huge hill. That was another thing with this track layout, is that there's two smaller drops, like a roller coaster dip where like you go down and down again, and then the 50-foot drop at the end of the ride. So that in itself was also like super cool, and it being like a super long ride, it was just really fun to ride. But once you go down Slip and Falls and you're traveling through a little forest area where the animatronics from America Sings say, "How do you do?" to you as you sail by, and this is when you get introduced to the story of the ride. Brer Rabbit decides that he wants to adventure and see the world, so he leaves home to go find it. However, all of his friends and neighbors warn him that it's dangerous and that he shouldn't go, but that doesn't stop Brer Rabbit. As he's out on the road, he keeps getting chased and attacked by Brer Fox and Brer Bear, who are attempting to catch and eat him. He then outsmarts them every time. You go down the roller coaster dip, and then another small drop that takes you into the laughing place, which is where Brer Rabbit, it seems like just an area where all the critters go to laugh. It feels like a place where they all go to like get high. It's really weird. I never understood. I never understood that part of the ride. It just is.
You may be onto
I
something
think it
there.
is because it's literally just a bunch of animals in a weird cave laughing, and but
Just sounds like a Saturday night.
just hanging in a
Well,
weird cave laughing.
Yeah.
Dumbo gets drunk, right?
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, so Brer Rabbit lets his guard down in the laughing place, probably because he is high, and is finally caught by Brer Fox. And this is when you're taking up the final lift hill, the Chickapin Hill, Brer Fox's lair. And at the base of the lift hill are two vultures who taunt you and basically tell you that you're about to die as you ascend up the hill. It is terrifying. I swear to God, they sit there and they're like wearing like tuxedos and they're looking at you and they're like a villain, like twirling their fingers, and they're like, "Oh, we'll show you our laughing place." It's so creepy. And then at the very top of the hill, you see Brer Rabbit tied up, and he's begging Brer Fox, "Please don't throw me into that briar patch." And then you plunge 50 feet into said briar patch, and Brer Rabbit is able to get away. And there's a huge celebration with his friends and neighbors while the titular song Zippity Doo Dah is sung. And you're greeted with one last scene where Brer Rabbit says, "I'm never leaving home again."
Sounds delightful.
Except for
Like,
that end part.
yeah, minus like the nightmare fuel that probably like traumatized children. But
Oh,
you
it
know,
definitely did.
it's
It was fun. I will say that as an adult, and I like could understand the story, and it wasn't just like cute talking animals with these like catchy songs. I'm like, what? That's not a great message to tell the kids, that like you should never leave home and that like adventuring is bad and that if you go outside bad things will happen to you. But you know, like,
But too bad.
yeah, I mean,
it's a
but that was
lesson I learned as a child, and it served me well.
because he's sitting there singing about like how he's like, "I'm never leaving home again," and then the little bluebird is with him and he's like, "Home sweet home is the lesson today, right, Brer Rabbit?" It's like, no, what? But anyway, the ride was originally going to be called Zippity River Run, but as the ride was being developed, Disney Studios released a movie about a mermaid called Splash. I have not seen this either.
Tom Hanks.
Oh, was he like?
Wasn't it? That was Tom
I
Hanks.
think it was. I'm pretty sure it was.
I'm looking that up because I am never going to get a Tom Hanks fact wrong, but I am pretty confident it was Tom Hanks. Splash. Daryl Hannah. Yeah. And John Candy. Oh, and Eugene Levy.
Huh.
Well, I think this is really funny too, that this is, I think I'll finish saying this real fast, but yeah, so Disney Studios was making a movie about a mermaid called Splash, and since the Imagineers were building a flume ride and mermaids live in water, company executives told Imagineers to put the mermaid character from Splash into the ride. And at this point, they were all in on the Song of the South theme, and Tony Baxter was like, "No, mermaids are not in Song of the South." And And so the execs like kept pushing, and they ended up making a compromise that like no mermaids would be included in the ride, but the name of the ride would be changed to Splash Mountain. And that's how it ended up with its name. And I do think this is interesting too, because I feel like when you and I were talking about this, Rob, you kept saying it makes sense. Put the Little Mermaid there because mermaids live in water.
Yes.
Yeah,
This
that's
should have been the Little Mermaid ride. Although a Tom Hanks themed ride would have been delightful too.
Could you
not
imagine?
even like just like that movie, just Tom Hanks themed, like him as a person.
And the premise of Splash 2 is that the mermaid character, she is like masquerading as a human, but every time she gets splashed, she goes all mermaid.
Okay, yeah.
So I feel like you could work that into the ride in fun and interesting ways because the point of the ride is to splash and be splashed.
Yeah. No, I hear you, but the Imagineers had already been like, we're making it Song of the South themed. Like, it probably would have been
Yeah,
better
that's
if,
just stubborn.
but it's just.
Do you know how many shows I've like gotten all the way through and then I've looked back and said, no, I got to scrap that and start it over. You got to do what you got to do for the art, man. When you have
Yeah.
Tom Hanks on board. I wanted this to be a Little Mermaid ride, but now that you're telling me it could have been a splash ride, I want that more.
I'm so sorry to have to break this to you that it wasn't that. But could you imagine though if they did decide, because it wasn't like the execs were make it just a splash ride. They were like, no, just put the mermaid into the ride.
Yeah, so it's all Song of the South.
But with mermaids.
Plus, yeah.
Daryl
Hannah,
like,
yeah.
and Tom Hanks and the mermaid show up like one last time or something.
Yeah, but he's wearing a straw hat and a tuxedo for some reason.
Oh my god, that would have been amazing.
So I want to rehearse my argument though, because you didn't, for why Little Mermaid would have made
yes, sorry.
actual sense. Yes, Splash would have been delightful, but here's why it should have been The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid, and all you Disney nerds out there, I don't have to tell you, is credited with being the beginning of the Disney Renaissance. This was the first great animated movie of our childhoods, right? Those of us who are not 75. So there was very good reason to build a ride around this, particularly a ride that was intended to draw a lot of people and be of interest. However, I will go ahead and argue against myself. The reason that they couldn't do this had nothing to do with The Little Mermaid and everything to do with the fact that the damn thing is in Frontierland.
Yeah, well, Bear Country in Disneyland at first. When did The Little Mermaid come out?
89.
Oh, and see, Baxter was already starting to make this ride. This ride released
Too bad,
in 89.
so sad, man. You're gonna have to scrap it and start over. We have a mermaid that's making money.
Well, the ride, when did Little Mermaid come out? Hang on. November 17th, 1989. And Splash Mountain opened July 17th, 1989 in Disneyland. So
they had an upcoming mermaid movie.
I mean, they were probably building it for years. I'm pretty sure that they announced that they were making a flume ride in like 80. Fuck, when did they? Sorry.
Hell of a year.
80 fuck, yes. I had to stay indoors that entire year.
It was 84. They announced they were making a flume ride, but I don't know if they announced any other details about it in 84.
That was a culturally potent year. That was the year of Ghostbusters and Buckaroo Banzai
and Gremlins,
and Repo Man. Yeah, Gremlins.
Ugh. So I hear you, but I just feel like the way that it panned out, it didn't work. You know, like The Little Mermaid wasn't out yet. They didn't know that it was going to be a hit success. But I guess on the same token, Song of the South was already out and wasn't a huge success and controversial. So you're right.
And how long ago had it been?
40 years, because it was like, or almost,
right.
It was like 30 something years.
I think my logic is perfect except for Frontierland. That is the only thing that screws it up.
Yeah.
The damn bears, which are delightful. then they deserve their spot. But just because there's bears doesn't mean there can't be mermaids.
And did you know that the bears for the Bear Country Bear Jamboree in Disneyland at least was replaced by Winnie the Pooh?
That is a sin. I don't dislike Winnie the Pooh. I think
Still a bear.
they're cute cartoons, but that is a sin.
So anyway, unfortunately, Splash featuring Tom Hanks and The Little Mermaid did not get their chance to become a flume ride. And Disneyland's Splash Mountain would open July 17th, 1989, and Walt Disney World's would open October 2nd, 1992.
I'm against AI art, but now I want this so bad. I just want to go into one of those AI generators and create images of the Tom Hanks Splash themed
Stop
ride.
it. I start squirting you with a water bottle.
All right.
Well,
I'll just do some kind of meditation where I put myself on that ride.
That's true too. We should hire we'll hire an artist to like make us a 3D rendering of the ride.
Yeah, we'll commission.
Coming to Patreon. Rob rides in his imagination. Splash Mountain Splash Edition.
I honestly, now I need to watch the movie Splash, and I will make this. Like, I'll visualize. I've ridden the ride so many times. I can create a new Splash Mountain.
We'll do it at the theater. Sounds good.
Next summer at TPAC.
Right. Splash Mountain Splash Edition coming to the Todd Performing Arts Center.
The biggest difference between the two different versions of Splash Mountain was that in Disneyland, the log was 1 person wide. But in Disney World, the log was 2 people wide and could even fit 3 people if you sat in the very back row. And I have unfortunately never been to Disneyland, so I never got a chance to ride their version of Splash Mountain. And I watched the POV for this video, and their version is honestly pretty different from Disney World's. I mean, like, it's definitely the same story, but there's different scenes in it. And Disney World is slower and seems more like an actual dark ride, whereas Disneyland's, when you're in that 1 person log, you're going so fast that I felt like you like didn't get any time to like take in the scenery or anything like that. It kind of also Disneyland's seems scarier because right before the lift hill, after you go through the laughing place, you see Brer Rabbit get caught, and then you see all of his critter friends and his like parents and family basically singing this like horrifying church choir music, basically being like, he's gonna die, you're gonna die, turn around, before you get to the vultures who then mock you and tell you you're gonna die. So it just seems even scarier. And Disney World, it seems like they really got a chance to like refine the ride because Disneyland is smaller, so they obviously had like a limited amount of space that they could build it in. But in Disney World, they obviously just took all the time and space that they needed to build that ride, and I think it turned out great. And so,
but still not enough time because they didn't stick any mermaids in it.
Yeah, that could have been their opportunity to make it Little Mermaid. You're right, Rob.
Right, see?
Just some exclusivity in Disney World versus Disneyland.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I will say confidently, without having actually ridden Splash Mountain in Disneyland, that Walt Disney World was better.
Okay.
Hell yeah. Fuck you, Disneyland.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of a rivalry between people who think Disneyland is better and think Disney World is better. So, and since I've never been to Disneyland, I'm on Team Walt Disney World.
There's certainly more of it.
Both versions. Yes. Well, either way, no matter what I think, both versions of the ride were smash hits. And Splash Mountain was now a staple of Disney parks, and Splash Mountain stayed one of Disney's most popular rides up until the year 2020. And I had to throw in this little fact here because I thought you would just find it very funny, Rob, is that in the late 1990s, the attraction at Disneyland received the nickname Flash Mountain, as some female riders would briefly expose their breasts during the final drop, hoping to make illicit use of the on-ride photographs that Disney later sold to riders.
Yeah, stick it to the man. Punk rock, as Mims would say.
Yeah, it is. There was some bit from a comedian that like him and one of his buddies did that and got into a bunch of trouble. I don't remember the
Flash
bit.
their breast in Disneyland?
Yeah.
Hmm.
His female buddy?
No, just two dudes. Just two chunky
And
dudes.
they got in
Showing their
trouble?
nipples?
Yeah. Yeah,
All right.
they got like called into like the, I don't want to say the office, but
I love the idea.
they got brought in by the Disney police.
If any of you ladies are out there, we would love to hear the story of what happened to you afterwards.
Yeah, we'll interview you for the podcast. So, now 2020 was a pretty uneventful year, so I may need to remind you of what happened during it. The world was shut down by a certain virus, which changed most things forever, but certainly the Disney parks. Honestly, how COVID impacted the Disney parks could be an incredibly interesting episode in itself, but another major event happened that year as well, in what felt like right in the height of COVID. George Floyd was murdered by a police officer on May 25th, 2020, and his death kicked off the Black Lives Matter movement, nationwide protests that lasted throughout the month of June that shined light on police brutality and racism that is still very present in America. The Black Lives Matter movement became one of the biggest movements in US history, and because of that, a lot of different companies came out to support it. Disney was one of these companies, and I believe more so to protect itself from the public's ire, they decided to announce that June that the long controversial Splash Mountain was going to be rethemed into a ride based off Disney's Princess and the Frog, featuring the first Black Disney princess. Now, Disney says that this was something that they had been discussing and planning for 5 years at least before this announcement. So, and I do believe them. I do believe that they had been planning and talking about it, but I do, however, find the timing of the announcement to be very purposeful. It felt very much like, oh look, we did a good thing. Like, don't be mad at us. And
It's
At a
very
time when it
convenient.
was happening. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, what's interesting about George Floyd is that this was not the first time. I mean, obviously, police violence against African American community goes back a long way, but even in terms of like in recent memory, protests against Trayvon Martin or
yeah,
what have you. I mean, it was just it's just been part of the national consciousness for decades. I think one of the differences with the COVID situation was, yes, the emergence of the hashtag and the movement around the hashtag, or however that works in which direction, but then the corporate engagement
yes,
in this,
yeah.
which was relatively new.
Yes, and I feel like the corporations felt obligated to do so because of how many people joined in on this. And you're right, and the social media aspect, so that the corporations could easily be like, "Look, we're allies," without doing much.
Yeah, I mean, if you think like in 1970 something, Gil Scott Heron says the revolution will not be televised, and he complains about police violence against black people in the very same poem/song. But the point is that corporations are always going to be opposed to justice for the people.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Which I
man.
think is what I'm trying to say with this, is that, like, I don't think Disney was necessarily doing a good thing announcing it then. I think they announced it to kind of save their asses, because like I if I remember correctly, during this time period a lot of people were starting to really point out like just how much racist shit is everywhere. And then Disney World is a place where millions of people vacation, and they have this like mountain dedicated to a racist property there. So I think they were like,
Yeah.
oh shit, we need to like get ahead of this and announce that it's going away.
The racism sort of bred throughout the entire, I mean, it's an old company, so natural, it's an old culture based company, so the racism that we don't need to rehearse here, but like all the way back decades and decades, it can become an embarrassment if it's going to shrink your audience and hurt your profit
Hmm.
margins.
And that's why I think that Splash Mountain was specifically like announced to be rethemed during that month. I do believe that they were planning on changing it. I just don't think that they were planning on, excuse me, I just don't think they were planning on announcing it until that whole movement was happening, and they were like, "Oh shit. we could end up under fire real quick. So let's do something here.
Yeah, it's a living monument to an era gone by in that corporation's history.
Mm-hmm. But made 30 years after. It's so weird. I don't.
Right,
It,
yeah.
it's
It's just such a strange thing to make a ride based on,
right,
but also even stranger that they did it, 35 years after.
right.
And but we don't want to imagine like the 80s Disney was woke. I mean, Pocahontas was still ahead of us,
That's true.
and the weirdnesses of Aladdin, which I love, but uh the everything about that movie is a fantasy of a Muslim culture, or even like a pre-Muslim culture that would have never looked like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's still a lot of exoticization of the East, sexualization of Pocahontas. Disney's like it's not like they got clean and
No.
then they were like, oops, we saw this weird thing happening in the park.
No, and I guess I wasn't also trying to suggest that either. I guess I'm just thinking that, like Mim said, it was controversial in the 40s,
Yeah.
and they still decided to make it a ride in the 80s. But I don't
When they had a perfectly good mermaid sitting right
know.
there.
Two perfectly good mermaids and a
Oh,
Tom
damn.
Hanks.
Man, it could have been a double mermaid thing.
Michael Eisner was correct on this one. They should have followed his intuition.
Damn straight.
I am personally though still happy to see the change. And the realization that it was time for that problematic piece of Disney history to not have a presence in the park. And so that is me saying that I am one of the people who is excited about this change. I personally love The Princess and the Frog and feel like Splash Mountain Ride Track could house the property really well.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it's a great movie.
yeah, it's real fun, but also problematic. Which is very interesting. Maybe I'll get into this a little bit more at the end when I talk about the new ride, because Disney released like a POV of the new ride and they made some really interesting decisions to try and like skirt around the more problematic parts of the movie, like their portrayal of voodoo and stuff like that, and the fact that their first black Disney princess was a frog most of the movie. They tried to kind of correct that in this ride. So, but we'll get into that in a little bit, I think. And as we know, on the internet, however, the people who hate things tend to be the loudest, and oh boy, there were some angry people about this change. Instantly, fights started to break out over the internet. My entire Twitter feed for the rest of June was practically nothing but whining over the replacement or people arguing with the people who were whining over the replacement. This announcement created an interesting subgroup of Disney fans that have now been dubbed the Save Splash Mountainers. And now you can spot one of these people online because they probably have Brer Rabbit as their profile picture, and the only thing that they talk about is Splash or how much they hate Tiana and the Princess and the Frog.
Yeah, so I mean, to push back against, I'm going on both sides of this back and forth. What makes Disney's gesture meaningful is the existence of these people, though. The fact that Splash Mountain is part of a Disney tradition. I said it was it was a calculated corporate move in a way. I was suggesting that, but it's also a meaningful sacrifice insofar as Disney is up its own ass as far as its own traditions are concerned, and
Yeah.
it's been re-releasing these damn movies over and over again for a century.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of that tradition, so to let it go is, I think, no easy thing.
Yeah, I mean, especially too because like one of the biggest branding things like in Disney World or at least the Magic Kingdom is like I got to go ride the mountains, and now technically the name of the ride is going to be called Tiana's Bayou Adventure, so they're like completely changing the name of it as well, so it's not going to be like the Three Mountains in Disney World anymore. They're changing a lot of things. And they're like
What's interesting,
sacrificing that like all the catchy songs in it, like Zippity Doo Dah. Everybody knows that song and kind of loves that
Oh,
song,
it's
so
a
it's
it's
like
it's a bop.
yeah. So it's like it is
and
interesting that they are sacrificing things, and they have a ton, like so many people are so pissed with them.
I
It's
think it's worth
honestly insane.
to so now let me side with those crazy people. This is how I would do it, and it's not easy. So I'm not. This is not going to be an easy road, but in a few simple steps, Brer Rabbit, the character, is part of the Uncle Remus stories, which were collected by a folklorist named Joel Chandler Harris. I read his book in grad school. And as a folklorist, what Chandler Harris did was go around to African American communities and collect their folk stories. And then he recorded them. So there is some, like appropriation and like white neo-colonial whatever thing going on there. Yes. However, he's also preserving that culture and there is an authenticity to it. But then when you add the Disney layer and then the weirdness of the narrative about Brer Rabbit deciding it's just better not to run away, yeah, that's where it can go wrong. It is possible, I think, to do a Brer Rabbit in a way that is um, respectful of the African American community. I think it is possible, but this wasn't it.
No. Yeah, I mean, especially when like the parts of the movie that they took such small parts of the movie because the majority of the movie was considered problematic even in the 40s. So,
And it is the Brer Rabbit stuff, which is part of the oral tradition of Black people.
these people, these Save Splash Mountainers, they created petitions on change.org and other places. They have Facebook groups where and many other echo chambers online. And I do think that it's very important to note that the arguments for saving Splash Mountain range from how dare you replace such a classic Disney attraction, like Rob was saying, to just straight up horrible racism, like really, really terrible stuff. But also it's the internet. So people are, like hiding behind their keyboard saying whatever they want, but terrible.
God, I love Twitter.
Yeah, right. And one of the biggest arguments that I saw was that they were like, we don't care that Tiana's getting a ride. We want Tiana to have a ride. Give her her own ride, though. Don't take away Splash Mountain. But I sort of think that those people are missing the point because retheming Splash Mountain isn't just about giving Tiana a bigger presence in the park. It's about taking out a controversial IP and one that arguably should have never had such a big presence in the park in the first place. And I also do want to take a moment to say, however, that if you are sad about Splash Mountain getting rethemed, I think that is okay. And I do not believe that that instantly makes you racist. And so, unfortunately, in every argument, there are going to be extremes arguments on both sides of the spectrum, and on the side that is excited for the retheme, the extremists were claiming that anyone who is sad about the retheme is in fact racist. Now this is also a minority that believes this, but it is still an argument I've seen thrown around, and I thought it was important to bring up, especially because I've seen many Save Splash Mountainers use it as a way to show how ignorant the people are who are excited about this retheme. And I also just think it's like a super bad faith argument. Like people grew up riding this ride for 30 years, and although the track layout will be the same, the theming of the ride really changes how you perceive the ride, so it will be different. And I don't see anything wrong with people being upset about it, but in the same vein, you also need to accept that it is changing, and that's where the trouble comes with a lot of these Save Splash Mountain people.
I think if I wanted to argue from their standpoint, I would say change it, but keep Brer Rabbit and lean into Brer Rabbit as an icon of the slave outwitting the master, which, theoretically is what he represented. Because, white people during slavery had all the power,
Yeah.
and Brer Rabbit was known for being tricksy. He was a trickster figure in the folklore who could, get around the mightier character, the
Yeah.
Brer Bear, those the big guys.
But that's why he
They
wants
could have
you.
done that.
Yeah, that's why I guess like without any context, why would Brer Rabbit want or tell the fox not to throw him into the briar patch? Like the whole idea is that the rabbit lived in the briar patch because he was small enough to fit in between like the spikes and stuff like that. And so like he
Right.
was out exploring in the world and blah blah blah, and then the rabbit or the fox catches him, and Brer Rabbit's like, oh gosh, don't throw me into that briar patch. That would be terrible if you did that. And the fox is like, oh yeah, you don't like that? Fine, I will throw you in there. And then the rabbit's able to escape because the fox can't reach him anymore. So that is part of the like tricksy attitude of it. He outsmarts the fox. It isn't actually that he doesn't want to get thrown into the briar patch or whatever, but
There would be ways to punch that up, and that Disney could sell that. I understand why they didn't make that choice. Like that is threading a needle, but still.
Also, they could have like rethemed it to Princess and the Frog without changing the name.
Yeah, but I think that I kind of agree with that, but I also feel like they were just like, we don't want any association with that ride anymore.
What is it called again?
Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
So they got rid of the mountain altogether.
Yeah.
That's kind of a problem, though.
Yeah, it's not a great name. I mean, people are definitely going to still call it Splash Mountain.
Call it Frog Mountain. I don't know. I think you need the word mountain because of that, as you said at the beginning, the icon of the
Call it
mountains.
Frog Mountain. I love
Whatever.
that name. I love that name.
Who wouldn't want to go to Frog Mountain?
I love that. I would.
Such a chill place.
Call it Mermaid Mountain.
Oh, if only.
In a perfect world.
Yeah. These people, the Save Splash Mountain people, came together on the internet to throw a collective tantrum. They begged, they pleaded, they screamed, they cried, they threatened, but all of their effort meant nothing to the mouse. And how could Disney go back on this announcement? They couldn't. And it took them a few years, but finally they announced the closing dates for both versions of Splash Mountain in America. There is a version of Splash Mountain in Tokyo Disneyland, but that one is not going anywhere. The Disney parks over there are run by the Oriental Land Company, so they kind of play by their own rules. So they already said that like their version of Splash Mountain isn't going anywhere. But Walt Disney World Splash Mountain would be closing January 23rd, 2023, and Disneyland's would be closing May 31st, 2023.
So Japan just lives by its own rules.
Yeah, I don't know a crazy amount about the Oriental Land Company, but essentially it's like it's a theme park creating company that essentially rents the rights to Disney's properties from Disney.
So they just like license Mickey Mouse and throw them in a theme park that's kind of similar.
Well, no, they're like Disney parks, and honestly some of the best Disney parks in the entire world. I don't
But
quite understand. I'd need to research it and stuff like that, and I do want to look into it, but they they've Disney and the Oriental Land Company have come into this weird agreement where it was basically like Disney didn't want to run like a theme park overseas, so the Oriental Land Company was like, "Let us do it," and Disney was like, "Okay."
well, and the context suggests that whereas Disney has absolute control over what it does in the US, it has to go through them to make changes in Japan.
Yeah, yep. Although I'm sure that like if Disney wanted to, they could probably retract their rights from them, but I don't think that they would.
I'm sure it would be complicated.
Yeah, I like I said, I really don't know that much about it, but I do know that I want to go to not to ride Splash Mountain, but they just released like they just announced it's called like Fantasyland or something like that, and they created like 3 new rides that look unbelievably amazing, and I want to ride them so bad. Where it's like the Oriental Land Company isn't afraid to spend big money to like theme everything, whereas it feels like Disney, especially since COVID, like doesn't want to shell out any money to be like as Disney-fied as they once were. So
And the racial politics in Japan are their own special thing.
yeah, that's a nice way to say it.
It is, yeah. I'm trying to keep things light.
We're definitely going to start getting into some fun things here. The closing announcement brought a wave of new tantrums because now it was truly real. Splash was going away, and Brer Rabbit, Brer Bear, and Brer Fox would have no more presence in the parks. Disney merch resellers saw this as an opportunity to buy out every single bit of Splash Mountain merchandise they could, and I mean, people were walking out of the parks filled with literal trash bags filled with rare plushies and other merchandise. And like I'm talking like more than any one person could ever need or sell, and quite honestly, it pissed me off. Like, I don't give a fuck about like buying any of that merchandise, but reselling in the like scalping in the Disney parks is a huge deal because like of course Disney's going to have like merch that you can only get in the theme parks, and these people create well that already creates like a scarcity, and then these assholes come in and create an even more artificial scarcity because Disney doesn't put limits on how much merch you can buy, so these assholes buy all of it. And it pisses me off
Why don't they do that though?
because Disney doesn't care. Because they're like, well, we sell it, so we get the money for it. But it's bullshit.
I don't
Scalpers are bastards.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the greatest logic either on Disney's part, because if you walk into a souvenir store and there's nothing in there, that sort of hurts your experience that you paid handsomely to have, right?
Right? I think. Uh, I mean, it's not like every single merchandise thing that Disney makes gets sold out instantly, but it's all. It's like
It's sort of like if Taylor Swift, Taylor Swift's a bad example because people pay like $1 billion to see her, but if scalpers bought all her tickets and then half of her audience wasn't there, you know what I mean?
yeah.
That's a letdown, and that's a cost to the whole experience for everyone.
Hmm.
I think it sort of works in that way.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way. I fucking hate scalpers, and these assholes were like really taking advantage of it. And honestly, just imagine these people. Like, there were actual pictures of these assholes walking down Main Street, USA, like holding their hands up high, carrying trash bags as big as them, filled to the brim with stuffed animals.
You think Buzzy might have been inside one of those bags?
Maybe. Oh man, I never even thought about that.
That's how they got him out.
We figured we solved the Buzzy mystery. The scalpers got him. I fucking believe that. Those people would do anything for money. Also, it's so hot in Florida, and you're like carrying, like, literally, it has to be like 50 pounds worth of stuffed animals just to like sell them for $1 million on eBay. I hope that those plushies aren't selling for anything and they're just stuck with like 1 million Brer Rabbit plushies in their
I'm
house.
genuinely curious.
Yeah, let's look this up, man.
Yep.
$550 on Mercari for a set of
Oh
3.
my god.
Uh, $50 on Amazon or $60 on Amazon.
Is
For
that new though?
Or not Amazon, eBay.
I see on Mercari an $1,800 Brer Fox Rare Original. Splash Mountain Brer Fox plushies, $168, probably each.
and they were probably $25 to buy in the anywhere between $25 to $30, I think, is like normally the plushie price in Disney World.
Yeah, this is 168 for just one, just Brer Fox.
See, and these
150.
people are taking advantage of like these people who are super sad and nostalgic about it, and they were taking away opportunities from people who actually would have enjoyed to have this merchandise. Although, like, I don't know why you'd still want to have this kind of merchandise, but
People like weird merch.
no, that's fair. I like weird merch.
Weird merch is fun.
I'm using stuffed animals to hold my mic up right now, so
I saw.
I appreciate the blathers that you had.
thank you. He's not really doing anything, but I brought them there anyway.
Moral support.
Bluey and Bingo are here with me too. They're helping hold the mic steady in the back, I think. At least that's what I'd like to think. So there's that. That's what I meant by mass merch buying, like the scalpers, like totally buying out like all there was to buy in the Splash Mountain store. And then as the days dwindled down for Disney World Splash Mountain, people became even stranger in their attempts to make money off of all the sad, safe Splash Mountainers. People started bringing glass jars, plastic bags, and plastic water bottles, and as they were riding the ride, they'd reach over the side of their log and scoop up some of the water and then put that water on eBay to sell. And I swear to God that this is a real thing. And the prices still to this day range from anywhere from $20 to $990 to buy.
What?
So,
How?
So people are selling $1,000 Splash Mountain water.
Yeah.
And is it getting like are people buying it?
I don't know.
Or is it just
I don't know if I can tell.
ridiculous being sold?
How does it differ? Like, why wouldn't I buy the $20 bottle?
That would be a good question for them. I would just buy like this person's Disney water from Splash Mountain, last day of ride, $35 in a little glass jar. This one's literally in a fucking plastic bag that, like, if you touch it, is going to burst. It says, "Water, last day of ride, will ship in mason jar and peanuts, $32.44." It was $36.04.
Oh shit, price cut. What a
You
bargain.
better jump on
No.
that.
And then this one is like, it's in a water bottle, and it says Disney Splash Mountain water from last day of ride, $990. Like,
But why?
I don't
Why that
I
one?
don't know. I can't tell you. I have no idea. I think it's crazy selling the water at all, but then selling it for that much is crazy.
Maybe it implies that the other water is a lie. Like this is the only real one because this is its true value.
Well, I guess like I should say too that like because you guys aren't Disney parks people, certain rides in Disney World, I would say most rides in most places have very distinct smells in Disney World, but especially the water rides. So like Pirates of the Caribbean and Splash Mountain, they have this special water that Disney uses. Like they don't use chlorine water; they use bromine water, which
Yeah, I know what you
yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah, and it smells so good. It smells amazing, and
Did I say this? I used to ride Pirates of the Caribbean over and over. I love that ride. Pre Johnny Depp.
yes, I agree. Pre Johnny Depp, but it is a fantastic ride. That ride rocks, and it smells so good in there because of the bromine water, and
Huh.
and so I think that's part of it. Where it's like, I wonder if people did end up buying this or saving it for themselves if they smell it and if it smells good. But I can't imagine. Like, I feel like it might. I don't know how bromine water works, but would it go stale after a while? Would it smell bad? It's kind of
I don't know. You could just buy your own bromine, I'm sure.
that's true.
Yeah, like what's stopping people from just making bromine water and just bootlegging that shit?
Yeah, now I kind of want to make a little fountain in my garden made of bromine water. The
Honestly,
birds would be pissed.
I'm kind of tempted to buy this $35 little glass because now I want to smell
course
it
you
and
are.
see if it smells weird or not. No, I won't do that. I'm not that crazy. But I feel like I don't know if anybody was that crazy, but people are crazy enough to try and sell it at least. So the next event in the saga was actual theft. And now I'm not sure how they could have managed to do this, but it did happen. When you're waiting in line for Splash Mountain, there are signs warning you about the 50-foot drop ahead. And there was one very iconic carved wooden sign of Brer Rabbit surrounded by water that says you might get wet. Someone managed to unscrew that carved sign from the wall and attempted to smuggle it out of the Magic Kingdom.
Holy shit.
And they were caught, and the sign was returned a few days later, which is
They were caught not unscrewing it, though? Like, that took a minute.
I couldn't find a lot of information about how it actually happened, but I mean, maybe they were. Maybe they injured the sign whatever. Maybe they hurt the sign when they were trying to take it down, because it was taken down for a couple days until like right before the ride closed. Disney put it back for like one last ride, essentially, for like the last day. And so now we get to the true meat and potatoes of this episode, the last operating day of Splash Mountain, which I guess is where I will start part 2 of this episode.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're at your...
Thank you for riding along with us. Please watch your step as you exit, and remember to take all personal belongings with you.
When the ride starts, I see mini Tom Hanks falling into the sea, and I find myself in an underwater room with Cape Cod above and a mermaid girl swimming alongside the ride car, speaking in unfamiliar but reassuring language. I see the boy interact with the girl, and then get pulled up in separate scenes, then down a long hall where I watch a progression of mermaid projections of the girl going from child to adult mermaid. At the end of the hall, still underwater, I see a now adult Tom Hanks drop down from above. A creepy scientist figure is peering down at me. He doesn't look too friendly. Tom Hanks falls, and the mermaid comes to get him, and the last thing I see in the room is his wallet, open to his driver's license, hidden in the coral. There's a sound of waves, and the ride tilts up. I break the surface. The New York cityscape unfolds in front of me. A naked mermaid is being arrested for indecent exposure under the Statue of Liberty, and a cop is showing Tom Hanks the wallet. There's a montage of falling in love scenes, Also, a mermaid in a bathtub. An evil scientist begins to lurk. Then I'm at a fancy dinner. The scientist splashes me, everybody in the car, and also the girl. And, she's a mermaid now. Second scene, she's a mermaid, and everyone is shocked, including Tom Hanks. But then we're at the secret lab where Tom Hanks is rescuing her. And we're picking up speed. We're picking up speed in the car. The scientists are in hot pursuit. The scientists, the one scientist, remember him lurking from the beginning? We thought he was evil, but now he's showing us a shortcut. Character redeemed. The harbor is this way, he says. You've got to jump, but if you go with her, you can never come back. The cops are closing in. They're yelling at us. Stop, you're under arrest. We go up the hill and then splash down. The Splash Mountain. Oh. What a delight.